Hello everyone, welcome back to day 4 of Python programming tutorial for beginners. Today, you're going to learn about errors and exception handling in Python. In this tutorial, I will explore the types of errors and how to handle the errors occurred in your computer program. So, as a computer programmer, everyone prone to making mistakes. So, everyone also typically in charge of creating computer programs. To compose programming language attempt to understand and explain mistakes made in their computer programs. For many types of mistakes, Python will tell you that you have made a mistake by giving you an error message. It is also important to read error messages carefully to understand where you made a mistake and how you may go about correcting it. For example, if you spell a print statement, a print function is a built-in function that's used to print the statements or any messages enclosed these quotations. So if you probably miss that or mistype it, the P with F, so this is not defined early, so you can't use this function because the interpreter couldn't understand that this is not recognized by Python interpreter. So it's tell you that you made a mistake in your program and you try to understand your error and make it correct. So you have to just correct by changing F with P, and now it prints out the message. Python also refers to these mistakes as errors. So we'll point to the location where an error occurred. When programs throw errors that we didn't expect to encounter, we call those errors bugs. Yeah, probably errors are bugs. So programmers call the process of updating the program so that it no longer produces unexpected errors. That is called debugging. So process of fixing errors is called debugging, but the error occurred is the bug. So you have to try to understand the errors and you have to go through the errors and fix that error. That is so-called debugging that error. So that process is called debugging. The error message tells you that where the error occurred. For example, if you make an error here, so it tells that and also tells you what type of errors occurred in your computer program as well. Okay, so here it just highlights you that here is an error, and you can try to figure out the errors and correct it. Some more useful in large notebooks, shells, or scripts. So Python attempted to run the function fprint, but could not determine what fprint is since it is not a built-in function and it has not been previously defined by user. So we will learn how to define a function that's called user-defined function. But this function was not defined yet. So, or it is not a built-in function. That's why it just highlights an error. There are basically two common errors that we encounter while writing Python. So one is syntax error. Syntax error. So the syntax error means there is something wrong with the way your program is written. That is called syntax. For example, punctuation that doesn't belong, a command where it is not expected, or a missing parenthesis can all triggers a syntax error. For example, if you miss something here, so there is a missing, so there is opening parenthesis, but that parenthesis is not correctly closed. So that is called syntax error. So this expected, this was never closed. So this is so-called syntax error, and there is any other, for example, if you miss, for example, quotation, it just indicates that there is an error where the error is occurred. It just shows you that in your lines of code, okay, unterminated string literal. So you can just correct that error. The other is name error. For example, this if you miss that the name of the function is incorrectly defined here or incorrectly used, so that is the name error because that name is not defined yet, or that name is not a built-in name in Python, so-called name error. So those two types of errors are most commonly occurred errors in Python program. So you can understand what type of errors occurred in your program. So the name error occurs when the Python interpreter sees a word does not recognize code that contains something that looks like a variable but was not never defined will throw a name error. For example, if you are trying to use a variable never defined before, for example, print x. X variable was not defined, but you are using that variable in this print statement. So that is so-called name error. So you can define that variable before using, okay? Before using x instead. Now the error is fixed. It just prints the values of that variable because the variable is already defined. All right. So far, so good. So you'll notice that if you make a different types of mistakes by forgetting to close a string, you will obtain a different errors. That is so-called syntax error. Does Python know about your error before it runs your code? Python is what is called an interpreted programming language. I have already discussed in an introduction to Python programming in the day one tutorial. So it is compiled languages examine your entire program at compile time, but Python is just examine your program at runtime, not compile time. So errors can be also determined or handled at runtime because it is interpreted programming language and are able to warn you about a whole class of errors prior to execution. In contrast, Python interprets your script line by line as it executes it. So Python will stop executing the entire program when it encounters an error, unless the error is expected and handled by the programmer. For example, let's try to see an example. Print. This will be printed. Okay. Look at on the screen. Print. This will cause an error. Print x and print this will not be printed. Okay, look, the first line, because Python interpreter just interprets your code line by line, starts from the first line and goes through each line of the code and prints if it is free from any errors. Let's begin with the first line. The first line is just printed out because this is free from any errors. The second is also printed out, but the third line is not printed yet because there is error that is called name error. X is not defined error. So after this error, no program or code is executed because the error stops here. So the executing this program will be stopped here because the errors occur because interpreter just interprets the code line by line. And if there is error occurred somewhere in code, it just stops executing after that error. Okay, that's why the first two lines are executed, but after the third line, it just stops executing the program. So this is what's called interpreting language. That's why Python do not know the errors before executing the program. But using compile programming language like C++, before executing the code, it's just compiles the whole program and it just determines the errors where it is occurred in your code, and it tells you to fix the errors, okay, before executing that program. But this is completely different from compiled language. That's why we call it interpreted programming language. I hope you learned about errors and other valuable skills that will continue to serve us we develop our program skills, so you can figure out the errors you encounter in Python program and understand and explain the types of errors in your Python program. But when you are writing any program, so you can handle errors using exception handling. Exception handling is a mechanism that allows programmers to handle errors and other exceptional events that occur during the execution of a program. For example, let's say if there is an error here and you can use try, you can put the codes inside the try and you can handle exception. For example, the except is name error, okay? Then print this error and print that error, okay? Look, the program is smoothly executed without any errors. Look at the first line is executed, the second line is executed, but the third line is not executed, but it just prints out name X is not defined message. Okay, so this is the way how you can handle to smoothly execute your program without any errors displayed in your screen, okay, or console, okay. For example, if you avoid this try, so you see that here is the error message, okay. So you can avoid these error messages using exception handling, using try except method. So if there is no error, it just prints out this statement. Otherwise, it prints out the errors handled. So the first two lines are just executed without any errors, but when it's the errors occurred at the third line, it goes to the exception. So you can exceptionally write messages even here. Name error. Okay, just there is some name error. So then you can fix that error and you can, for example, let's say X, Y, and Y is 0. Zero division, so this is a zero division error, so you can replace this zero division error. Yeah, number doesn't divisible by 0. So there are different errors, but the most common errors are syntax error and name error. So you can also handle, you can easily identify the type of errors inside in the screen. For example, here, just show you that zero division error. So you can replace the zero division error in this name error in the exception. And you can handle that error. All right, because number doesn't divide by 0. For example, if you replace this one, it just correctly print it out. So this is called exception handling. By using exception handling, programmers can prevent errors from crashing their programs and can provide users with more informative feedback about what went wrong in their program. The concept is present in many computer programming languages, so including Python, Java, C++, and many others. But the difference is the syntax, how to use the exception handling. So you can use try. There is a code block in the try that is colon, and in Python, there is indentation and a code block. So every code block has indentation. So you should keep that. You make it indented to identify that this code is, or this statement is under this code block. Okay. For example, if you and indented this part, it just errors because this statement should be under this try block. Okay, try block, and then the except block is also there. So you always use a block statement, and every block statement should be indented. Okay, keep your mind. That is the most important thing in Python. Indentation is very, very essential. But other programming language consider that. You just use indentation for code formatting in other programming language, but Python is mandatory to keep every block of statements indented. Okay. Basically, there are three basic concepts in exception handling. So the exception, generally, an exception is an object that represents an error. Exception means the errors, okay, or other exceptional events. Exceptions are thrown by the program when an error occurs. So exception is thrown by the program when an exception or an error occurs. For example, here, 2 is not divisible by 0, so the error is occurred. So the exception is just occurs here. So that is the exception. So the exception is 0 division error. So that is the exception. So you have to handle that exception. And the try block is basically a block of code that is monitored for exceptions. So if an exception is thrown while the code in a try block is being executed, the exception is handled by the appropriate catch block. Okay, that is except. And the catch block is except. So the catch block is a block of code that is used to handle a specific type of exceptions, a specific type of errors. And catch blocks are associated with try blocks. So in Python, exceptions are errors that occur during the execution of a program. So they disrupt the normal flow of the program and can be handled using try and except method. Okay. So in this case, for example, this is an error is occurred in this case. So the exception just handles that errors and it prints the error message instead of that the statements inside the try block. So the basic exception handling with try except, this is example, and in this example, the try block contains the code that could potentially throw an exception. For example, 2 divisible by 0 is not possible, so that is exceptionally throw an error. Okay, so the catch block is used to handle the zero division error, or any syntax error, or any name error, whatever the error is. For example, if you use a print hi, so you just replace this name error. Okay, so you can change this name error. So this is name error. The error is just occurred in the try block. So if the error is occurred in the try block, it goes to the exception, because the exception caches the errors occurred and it prints what error occurred in the try block. Okay, that is just stops the normal flow of the program when the errors occurred. All right, so we can handle that error using the try except block in Python. So the benefits of exception handling, it is very essential for improving program readability. It gives more informative error messages that's good. You can customize the error messages and it gives you error messages. It avoids any error messages displayed on the console. Also, it helps us to improve code readability. So those are exception handling in Python. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Write comments below. And